folks, I'm Billy Pennell. Thanks for joining me for another of my favourite musical moments. I was going to speak with you today originally about one of my favourite guitar players, Peter Green, and what his great talent did for music. But then I'll have to go back to the early parts of the blues scene in London. This is now about mid-60s. There was a musician called John Mayall who was in his 30s, and he was sort of the father figure of young blues players at that time. He had a band, Blues Breakers, and they would play at local venues. So young musicians would go along to hear the band playing the sort of music that they'd maybe heard very rarely before, electric blues. And he was there one night and a young musician came up and had a chat and said, "My name's Eric Clapton and I've just left a band called the Yardbirds and I would like to know if I could come in and sit in with you." "Sit in with me," says John. "Yeah." So he gives Eric Clapton the lead guitar spot in the Blues Breakers, and Eric stays for about a year, records a groundbreaking album which really introduced that sort of volatile electric blues guitar playing to an English audience and to audiences around the world. So he only lasted about a year, Eric, and he's a bit restless, so he moves on. And there's another young guitar player, less known than anyone that's probably been in the club and asked him to sit in with John Mayall. And John wasn't a great soloist in his own right, but he could spot a great musician a mile away. And that happened right throughout the career of the John Mayall Band. Okay, so it's a young bloke who's sitting in the audience and comes up after a break and says hello to John Mayall. And on that particular night, Eric Clapton was late or hadn't turned up or something like that. And I guess on a whim, John Mayall says, do you know the Eric songs that we play? He says, "Yeah, I come here all the time. Why don't you sit in just for the next couple of nights while Eric's unavailable?" So that's what happened. So here's Peter Green sitting in for Eric Clapton. So when Eric decides he won't be coming back, Peter Green gets the job. And so he's the new young guitar hero on the block. But he wants to move on as well. And so there were two musicians in Mayall's band, and they said to Peter, "Look, would you consider forming a band with us?" Or a rhythm section, a bass player called John McBee and a drummer called Mick Fleetwood. And so they went to John Mayall and they told him the story, and because Mayall was so generous about all things like that, he wanted to make sure his musicians got another chance elsewhere if that's what they wanted. He said, "Yeah, off you go, do your thing." So they did, and they formed a band originally called Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac, but Green was just anti-stardom. He didn't want to be the centre of attraction. He would have been because of his great talent. So he said, "Look, let's call the band Fleetwood Mac after the surname to this rhythm section." That I thought was just an extraordinary gesture. So they get a recording deal. They have great success with 4 albums, and they have hit singles with songs called "Black Magic Woman," later covered, as you know, by Santana; "Albatross," a beautiful instrumental piece; another semi-instrumental piece called "Oh Well," and a really very strange electric blues song called "The Green Manalishi," which I'll talk to you about now. After 2 or 3 years of working with Fleetwood Mac and writing all those great songs, there's obviously something that's not quite right with Peter, and it was only discovered later on that he was suffering from a mental illness, and that was affecting his writing, not such a big degree to his performance. And the song he wrote that I just mentioned, "The Green Manalishi," it's an incredible piece of music. It's a song that he thought was important for him to sing and to write about because it's an anti-rock star song. It's a song against money. The Green Manalishi is money. It's evil. And there are instances during Green's career where he would say to his manager, "Don't send me any more money. It's a bad thing." And so with all that happening, he was forced to step away from music for quite some time. He did a couple of solo albums, one produced by Snowy White, the great English guitar player who's toured the world with bands like Pink Floyd and others, and he was just one of many younger musicians that just looked up to Peter Green, and he tried to put an album together with Peter, which was an okay release, but Peter didn't want a solo on it. He didn't want to do that anymore, so Snowy White filled in on all the solos during the album's performance. So now Peter's in semi-retirement, battling his illness, and in 1997, some musicians that were mates of his called the Splitter Group. They said, listen, why don't we put a band together? There won't be any big fuss about it. We'll just put some music out there. We'll do some low-key tours. And they stayed together till 2020, till the year of Peter Green's death. But he's somebody whose music I've admired so much for all those reasons, and for the fact that he was able to step away from stardom. It was something that really had a very negative effect on him, as we've been talking about already. But the song I want to leave you with now, it's one of the most powerful rock songs I can recall having heard. And live, it's just even more extraordinary. It's a 1970s version of Fleetwood Mac, with Mick Fleetwood and John McVie, who at that time were one of the world's great rhythm sections. They probably still are. And the band was augmented by two other guitar players, and of course by Peter Green. Let's have a listen together, and I'm just so pleased to be able to share this extraordinary piece of music now and this extraordinary musician. This was Fleetwood Mac and the Green Manalishi.
This is called the Green Manalishi. Day goes to sleep and the full moon. Night is so black that the darkness cooks. Making me do things I don't want. You're the Green Manalishi with a two-pronged crown. All my trying is up, all you're bringing is down. All of them running away, never make you just trying to keep from following you.
you very much.